Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dream Center for our presentation of the John R. Moser Park dedication. Thank you for joining us on this windy afternoon. We're very thankful this event is no longer taking place at the park itself, and I'm sure you are too. Now, to start off, I'd like to thank everyone involved that's made this dedication possible. First off, I'd like to thank some members of Renew. I would like to thank Ruth Meadows, who helped co-sponsor the application for me to get the grants from 17 Strong that funded our sign. I'd also like to thank Joanne Wallish and Councilmember Klink for both working cooperatively with me to organize this event. It took a lot of effort, a lot of meeting time to get this all worked out, so thank you to them. I would also like to thank 17 Strong Board for providing us the funds to purchase the sign for the park. I'd like to thank Steve Timmer and the Parks Board for being very supportive of this event and our efforts. It was very important to us to give the park a sense of identity. And lastly, I'd like to thank Wendell and Kim Conning for allowing us to use this beautiful center to host our event, especially with such short notice. We let them know just not even a week ago that the event was being moved, and they were so accommodating for us, so we really appreciate them. So first off, I thought it'd be appropriate to talk about 17 Strong, because without their gratitude, we would not be able to do what we're doing here today. A little background of 17 Strong, it was a product of the Sense of Place Committee, which was composed of resident volunteers, members of City Council, and City Administration coming out of the city's strategic plan in 2012. Today, it is unique in that it is a citizen-led initiative that strives to promote structure and direction for Hamilton's 17 neighborhoods. A major role they play in revitalizing our neighborhoods is through the microgrants they allocate annually, which empowers citizens to identify key areas of improvement within their respective communities. This past August, they approved Renew for grant funding up to $2,000, which allowed us to purchase the sign and provide the identity for a park which is increasingly proving to become the central hub of North End activities. And for those who are unfamiliar with the park, it is at the corner of Heaton and Greenwood. It was very interesting in that what spurred this whole movement was this past summer we had an event at that park, and we had a reporter write an article on it, and he referred to the park as the yet-to-be-named park. And so we knew at that moment that it was very important for us to give it an identity, to pick an appropriate name for it so that we could promote it and its activities. And down the road, when we're doing more great things in the park, it had a name, and they wouldn't have to keep referring to it as the yet-to-be-named park. Another point with this is you see it's located at 664 Heaton Street. That is the new address. As of last week, I met with Steve Timmer and Tim Hoskins from the Triangle Sign Company. We went out to mark the location of where the sign was going, and Tim had asked me prior to going, he asked, "What's the address of the park?" To which I was baffled. I did not have an answer, and later we found out that the park didn't have an official address. It was just known as the corner of Heaton and Greenwood. So Councilmember Klink worked with Liz Hayden, the Director of Planning, and was able to find an address that we can use from now on for this park. So thank you to all of them again for that hard work. And at this point, I would like to introduce Joanne Wallish. She is the 17 Strong liaison to the Renew Board, and she's going to talk about what Renew is and a lot of the projects we've been working on.
Good morning. This really is indeed a great morning for the North End in Hamilton. We are here to celebrate Judge Moser and one of his many contributions to our city. I'd like to share a little history about our Renew group. We've been working in the North End about 5 years. 5 years ago, Kathy Klink, Brandon Sarber, and I walked the North End, knocking on doors and listening to the residents. We were a bit naive to think that we would have an easier time getting residents involved. But one thing was that I'd like to mention that was really a unanimous decision was that there was a ton of potential at the park on 7th and Heaton. It was underutilized, and it's a fabulous little gem in our city. As many of you remember, it was a vibrant corner when Harris Pharmacy was there. There was a lot of activity, and it was a much healthier corner. We saw that the city had this park. It wasn't being utilized to its fullest extent, and we decided that that would be the beginning of our building blocks for the neighborhood. Reverend Barb Cope had restored her beautiful building across the street, and it's directly across from the park if you've not seen it, and she continues to work with youth in the area, and she also was a contributor to getting the park to be what it is today. Our first event was to host a picnic for the residents through the generosity of Tim Nab and Kathy Klink. We fed 400 residents at that picnic. I think we all had a revelation about the amount of true need that we witnessed in the neighborhood that day. We also had a few meetings at Harris Pharmacy, and residents were very angry that the pool was being taken out of the North End ball fields. Once again, our city liaison and leader of 17 Strong, Kathy Klink, went to bat for us, and a third splash pad was installed at the ball fields that summer. We had two other early projects under the leadership of Beth and Steve Bachman. They planted an urban garden with the help of Alfred and Patty with hugs, and we also had an Appalachian music festival at the ball fields. I had an idea that we could have art lessons for children in the neighborhood. I presented the idea to Robin Zari, and she took off with it and had a very successful Art in the Park program last summer with the 17 Strong grant. There were 30 children and parents attending along with them by the end of the sessions. I'd also like to acknowledge her parents. Kim Snyder is here today, and Kim and Bob were tremendous support for the program over the summer, and Kim especially attended, I think was a weekly guest at Art in the Park. Robin, I'd like to talk a few minutes about Robin because I think she is an example of just a really fine young woman. We were lucky enough to hook up with Fairwood Elementary School. Paige Patton-Radel is the principal. Casey Coblin, another teacher who's in attendance today, all had great ideas for us and really helped us make inroads into the community. Casey organized a kickball tournament, and there were about 120 children in attendance at that kickball tournament. These three staff at Fairwood have just joined in and really helped us a lot. One other thing I'd like to say about Robin is that she gave up 6 Saturday mornings of her summer to run this program. And I'm not sure many teachers or many people in the community would do that. One of the lessons we learned by walking the neighborhood was the fact that many residents are not comfortable coming to the city hall. We talked to Pat Moser and asked if he would come to the neighborhood and have a meet and greet with the residents. Council members Kathleen Klink, Tim Nab, our city manager Joshua Smith, and Brandon Sarber all showed up and listened to the concerns, complaints, and ideas that the residents had. There were about 12 complaints voiced that first week. Within a matter of weeks, 7 of those had been resolved, and we are moving forward on the other complaints. Jeff Gambrell suggested that we get the lights in the park repaired. That was taken care of. Pat Muller got that taken care of for us within 5 days. That project was done. A large sign that said road closed, and I believe it might be shown on one of the slides, that was removed. Several street lights were repaired, and the police were involved also. They were gathering information about complaints about houses that were nuisances and just not good properties in the neighborhood. It was that day that we met Ruth Meadows. Ruth lives a couple of doors down from the park, and she has been a very active participant in our group. She attends all our meetings and has great ideas. It was also that day that an article described us as the yet-to-be-named park, and as you see, Jeff is taking care of that. We have received tremendous support from our city leaders. Their willingness to participate in the meet and greet demonstrates their true level of concern and commitment to improving our city. We have a great committee assembled, but we are still working on getting more residents involved in 17 Strong. I would also like to acknowledge another person that did a lot of work on the North End, and he is here today, and that is Tim Spoonster. Tim ran a ball league for many years at the ball fields for the children. It was a summer program that he had for many years, and I think his work laid the groundwork for some of the things we're doing today. Let's see here. I would like to talk to you about a few of the projects we have coming up for 17 Strong in this year of 2018. Robin has agreed to host another Art in the Park, apply for another grant, and so we'll have 6 more art sessions out there. We are working on having additional, possibly music lessons for the kids at the same time. So we want that park to become a very viable place to be and a great place for gathering of children and parents in the neighborhood. Lane Public Library has agreed to have the bookmobile come to the park during Art in the Park. Ruth Meadows once again suggested that we try to put in a half-court basketball area at the park. That is something we will be working on in 2018. Ruth's comment was there's just not enough for the kids to do in the neighborhood. So that would be a great way to actually give young adults and youth another activity at that park. The city is working with us right now to have a crosswalk installed at the park. There were a lot of complaints about speed on Heaton Street. So this proposal will have to be approved by City Council, but it is on the table, and hopefully it will all come to fruition maybe in the early part of the year. Thank you to Pat Moeller for helping us with that. I'd also like to acknowledge Kim and Wendell Conning for the wonderful work that they do at the Dream Center. As we speak, they are in the back making Thanksgiving baskets for the residents. They've been so supportive of our group. We have our monthly meetings. They have offered to let us have our monthly meetings here. I would also like to acknowledge a new pastor that we've met, Linda Lyota. She's not here today, but she has been operating a church on Heaton Street called the Christian Family Center for about 20 years. And she just opened up a food pantry that is quite impressive at 6th and Heaton. These people are the true pillars in our community. So, Your Honor, and Steve Timmer, if I can see you out there, you see that your early work on establishing this beautiful park will continue to affect the lives of families in the North End for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. And if we could go back a few slides to the picture of the park. There's the road closed sign that Joanne was talking about. It had been there for years, and when Renew started having activities in the park there, we noticed that it was a sign that no longer needed to be there. So we were able to get that out. And here are the future activities for Renew that we're working on. On the left there is a depiction of the crosswalk that we're going to try to get in next year, hopefully. What Joanne did not mention was that she was the one behind getting that approved, and she was mentioned at the State of the City address recently and acknowledged for all the hard work that she has done on that. And the picture on the right, that's not an actual depiction of what the court will look like. That was just the only one I could find online. Okay, and at this time, we are going to have the grand unveiling of the sign. When we were organizing this event and planning it for the park, we were really excited about the idea of having a tarp or sheet over it and being able to pull it off. Unfortunately, because of the weather and the wind, I had to digitally do an unveiling. So we can go ahead and unveil that tarp. If you haven't been out to the park yet, that sign was just installed yesterday, so it has that new sign smell to it. So make sure to stop by after this ceremony and go check it out. It really looks wonderful, and the design that we went with is the current design that the parks are using with their signs. And at this time, I would like to invite Mayor Pat Moser to come up, as well as Judge Jack Moser.
First off, congratulations, Judge.
Thanks. Yep. Here.
Before I read this proclamation, I want to make a couple of comments. First off, I can't add to anything that Jeff and Joanne said because they said so much and thanked all the right people. But Jeff, I think you're going to be a future mayor, governor, or just go to Washington, D.C. But please take Joanne with you if you would. I know we'd get a lot of things done in that situation. There's a lot behind that park because I think when I first got on council, George McNally was involved with getting that park, somehow getting additional property. Detective Cole was involved with it. There was a lot of work, but then Judge Moser stepped in and truly put all these pieces together and got it done. And but like I said, I think, and I'm glad that you mentioned Pastor Cope, Barb Cope, because she would come to council sometimes and talk about that park until something got done. And Ruth Meadows, I'm so glad that you're so involved in the community. She's an artist as well. Had a chance to meet her during one of those Saturday events that was put together by 17 Strong. Okay, now Judge Moser, and I'm going to keep calling you Judge because you earned that, and that is like almost the ultimate respect terms you can give to somebody. So, Judge Moser, I had a chance to see you yesterday at the Butler County Philanthropy Luncheon, and it was kind of neat. They'd say, please stand up if you're a veteran. Well, Judge stood up and other folks stood up. Stand up if you're an honoree. Well, Judge Moser stood up, other folks stood up. But when you get down to these other things that he's done, he'd be the only person to stand up. Like, who's the only master gardener in the room? Well, it'd have to be Judge Moser. Who would be the only person who actively plants trees around the entire city? Well, it'd just be Judge Moser stand up. And truly, I think he defines the expression like active philanthropy. I mean, truly active, get your hands dirty. Writing a check's always good, but getting your hands dirty philanthropy, and that is you. And he's done that before, too, when we were planting trees around the city about a year or two ago. So, I mean, this man is a role model for Hamiltonians, Butler Countyans, Ohioans, but he is the man. So I've got a proclamation here, also the mayor proclamation. Whereas Hamilton City Council and City Administration would like to give recognition and show appreciation to Judge John R. Moser for his many years of volunteerism and public service to Hamilton and the surrounding community. Whereas Judge Moser is a fine product of the Hamilton City School District as he graduated from Hamilton High School in 1945, went on to graduate from Miami University in 1950. And whereas Judge Moser has served the community with distinction in a long list of public appointments and offices, demonstrating always his willingness to place his concern for the public good ahead of his own personal interest. And I used to see him at the end of the Columbia Bridge. There's an island there. And it's like 5:30, 6 o'clock at night. It's dark out there. And I think I see a red truck. Is it a red truck that you had, Judge? White truck. There's this man in a white truck pulling weeds, planting flowers. It's dark at the end of the Columbia Bridge during rush hour, but he was doing it. And that's it's just an amazing man. So he does put the public good ahead of his own personal health almost, because you're out there dodging cars, but he was pulling weeds and planting flowers. Whereas a few of his notable accomplishments include, but are not certainly limited to, serving the community well for many years in numerous capacities, including 19 years as judge for Butler County Common Pleas Court. In the private practice of law from 1950 through 1979, in conjunction with his private practice, he was an assistant prosecuting attorney for Butler County, including being a member of the Butler County Board of Elections for many years, where he served as chairman. And Judge Moser retired, to loosely use that word retired, January 1st, 1999. But whereas just because Judge Moser has been in retirement since 1999 does not mean that he has stopped giving back. He has understood the importance of community building and preserving green spaces within the city of Hamilton. He has demonstrated this by purchasing the vacant land in the corner of Heaton and Street and Greenwood Avenue and then turning it into a neighborhood park for all to enjoy. Whereas seeing how Judge Moser has crafted this park, and that's the best word I could probably come up with, but we like to add other words to that, but he made this park, he crafted this park. He was also voted Citizen of the Year in the year 2000, Otuk of the Year in 2005, and he's had a long, successful career in public service. City Council decided to name this new park after him. And it was 17 strong, and Jeff and Kathy and everybody who said, we have to do this, and City Council is doing what probably should have been done years ago. But now therefore I, Pat Muller, Mayor of the City of Hamilton, Ohio, and Hamilton City Council members do hereby proclaim the neighborhood park on the corner of Heaton Street and Greenwood Avenue as John R. Moser Park, and thank him for his leadership, service, dedication to others in the city of Hamilton, Ohio, and wish him well for the future. Judge Moser, this is just a proclamation which adds to the sign that you have at the park. And Jeff, that was a great unveiling of that sign. Thank you. Judge, this is yours. It's a very small token of what you have done for this community. Now, Kathy, you want to say a few words before? Okay. Yeah, you've got to say a few words, Judge.
It's hard to add to anything that our mayor said, and thank you very much for your comments. And thank you very much to those of you in the audience who have helped me. You know, this all started with trying to add some property to this this park. And in the process of that, we had to go through a lot of tough red tape of the city of Hamilton. Now, the one person who cut a lot of that card tape for us was our current city manager, because he didn't stand for a lot of red tape. In fact, he converted it to a light pink. But anyway, it was an interesting start, and my tree planting business started someplace around right after I left the and I'd have to apologize, by the way, and I might as well face it. I'm suffering from I knew I'd have to say it. Forgot it. Anyway, there it is. I'm suffering from an anomic aphasia. Sorry, I had to interrupt this talk with that explanation, but anomic aphasia is simply an effort to find your nouns. And I was telling somebody that it affects taking the nouns and also sometimes the verbs, and he says, hell, there isn't much left. You know? But anyway, that's my problem. I've planted with the help of Steve Timmer. He helped me a lot plant trees, and a lot of other people. But we ended up planting 670-some trees in the city of Hamilton. And all of those trees were planted between the curb and the sidewalk. And I noticed right up in the corner of that picture, was a beautiful, nice elm tree. Now, that elm tree, it was growing fantastically great. It's not there anymore. Somebody tore it down, and it was a great tree growing right there in that spot. Also, I'd put a tree between the curb right down the street, about 100 feet. That one failed. Somebody tore it out. So this is a problem we're going to have, I think, in that neighborhood. And I would hope this situation would not continue. But I'm pointing out this was my first experience at that corner. And of course, one other thing, I couldn't have really figured out what to do except with the help of Steve Timmer. And thanks, Steve. Other than that, I just can appreciate very much this honor, and it really is an appreciation. I just can't believe it. There's so many others here, and I just can't say any more about it. Say thank you.
Thank you, Judge Moser, and thank you, Mayor Moeller. Hearing Mayor Moeller's proclamation, yeah, Judge Moser, you are truly the deserving gentleman to have that park named after. We appreciate all the years of service that you have done for our community. And at this time, that concludes our ceremony. I welcome you all to stay with us. We have food in the back, drinks, so you're more than welcome to stay. And after the ceremony, I encourage you to drive down the street. You just go straight down 7th, and it dead ends into the park. But thank you all for joining us, and we hope you have a nice day.